I'm like, I'm not nervous, but I'm just like, how the fuck do people do this? Like,
Videos.
how do
Yeah.
people do anything where they
Yeah.
show up in the world? That's like my major thing in my life right now, I think. But I made a little Notion page. I thought I could show you.
Yay.
I'm gonna screen share. For the people who cannot see, I'm saying this like aggressively. For the people who cannot see the people's faces right now, I am on a Zoom call with some friends who are helping me record this because I don't know how to talk to myself yet. Thank you. Okay. That's for YouTube. Okay. So I made this cute little thing. The first step would be to like go to this link. I use Astro-Seek because it's free and I don't have the $250 to use the super professional equipment right now, but it does the job. So this link will take you to, I'll just put my birthday in. I don't care if the internet has it. Learn about me. Figure me out, please. Here is my birth information. And I'll show you what this does. So, I'm gonna do it tomorrow because that's when the full moon is. I am currently living in Sheboygan, and I will be in Sheboygan tomorrow. Um, I also get really anxious about people seeing the ads that pop up if they look at the recording. So like, I have nothing to do with the NBA, so it doesn't actually expose me at all. Okay, the key thing about this is to choose the house system whole sign. Can you see me scrolling down there?
Uh-huh.
Whole sign is what like Channing Nicholas uses. This is like the ancient or traditional system where most of these websites, the default is Placidus, which is more complicated in some ways and not in others. And I used to use Placidus because it was the default and that's what I learned on. But since I've like committed to Hellenistic astrology and like medieval astrology methods, I use exclusively whole sign. And it does make finding your houses so much simpler. And simple does not mean it's weaker. Like it's to me, it feels like the mightier system, but I have no issue with other house systems. Please don't come after me, whoever's watching this. I love you and you're valid. Okay, so this is the double chart. This is my birth chart is like the what the blue symbols are, and then the orangey red is where the current planets are. And it's set up for me to view it by my rising sign. So your rising sign is always the first house. Um, I think both of you already know this, but when in a whole sign, your houses are one zodiac sign. So for all the 12 signs, there is an assigned house, and it's determined by your rising sign. And your rising sign is on this horizon line, this like flat middle cross section kind of line. And the opposite of the first house is always the seventh house, and it's always the opposite sign. So I'm a Capricorn rising. My sister sign or the opposite sign is Cancer. So, and that will always be in the same place. But what changes are the planets' movements around the circle. So we'll get into like why we look for the moon stuff, but right now the moon, or tomorrow, the moon will be in my fifth house. It's not making a conjunction to anything. It's close to my AC, but there's no other planet in this house. So when I look at like what the full moon is going to do in my life, that's like the first thing I check is like, is the moon on top of something in my chart? Doesn't, it's not making a significant connection for me. Um, but it's in my fifth house. So I know that the fifth house significations are going to be really important to me. Okay, so I'm going to go back to this original page. That's the first thing. Um, the second thing is to talk about the difference between new and full moons. Um, and like I don't have a set in stone opinion about what we like need the new moon or the full moon to do for us or like how we work with it. Um, but a lot of people talk about the new moon as like a time for planting seeds, for dreaming up what you want. It's not necessarily like the time for you to make action, but that quiet space where there's not a lot of light, where you can like go inward and decide what you want to happen in the next 6 months is what some people believe, because the new moon is connected to its own full moon, and it's almost always exactly 6 months after. So like the new moon in Scorpio would be during Scorpio season when the sun is in Scorpio. And then 6 months later in Taurus season, the full moon would be in Scorpio. So you have that six months of like germination. And full moons are when some people believe full moons are when things are at their culmination, their release point, publishing or sharing kind of moment. It can have a really highly emotional kind of outwardly emotional expression, but for things that you plant 6 months, like the seeds of 6 months prior, it often looks like that is what is coming to fruition. So most people don't plant seeds of chaos or emotional turmoil. They plant seeds for like they want to create something or they want to see a shift in their life, and that's usually what shows up 6 months later. There's a lot of discussion of like when you plant a seed on a new moon for like new moon in Taurus or something, every full moon in Taurus for the rest of your life could be expressing that. It depends on like how you see the moon. But I guess now is the time to talk about it. We follow the moon because the moon signifies change and movement and shifting. There are other planets who also talk about change and movement and shifting, but the moon is so connected to the water in our body, the water around the world. It's like so part of our daily, monthly, like our existence, because we can see it every night, unless it's completely dark in the new moon. So that's why we kind of like, I believe that's why we track it so closely for these like shifts and changes in our lives. Talked about that. The kind of going back a little bit, Placidus is a type of quadrant house system, which is not set up in by the rising sign necessarily, like in the neat house per zodiac neatness. It's more of like the geometry of like time and space, basically. So it's a little bit like you could have up to 3 different zodiac signs in one house with a quadrant house system. But in whole sign and other sign systems, but mostly whole sign, it is really neatly set up like that. I also put a link to Channing Nicholas's new and full moons list for this year, if you want to look at that. Um, okay, so we have like why we track the moon kind of information, and then how to get your transit chart open. I wanted to kind of quickly go through 3 different rising charts to show you just like an example of how the charts are set up. So Gemini rising, and I also chose with a Taurus moon because we're looking for where the Taurus moon will be. For the people who are watching this, I'm recording this the day before the full moon in Taurus in November 2024. Okay, so for Gemini risings, Taurus is the 12th house, the house right before the first house, right here. And the full moon will be there. So if you're a Gemini rising, you will always know that your 7th house is the opposite sign from Gemini, Sagittarius. Your 10th house is Pisces, and your 4th house is Virgo. So these are all of the mutable signs. You have these like, it's like a cross. You have this cross that is set up by your ascendant. And it's not fair to say that these are the most important houses, but these are like the points in your chart that all the other houses kind of respond to or inform. That's like the simplest way to put it. Every house is holy and wonderful and has their own significations. But when you are a mutable sign rising, like I know one of the people on this call is, every other one of these major cross points will be the same type of sign. So mutable. So Leo is a fixed sign. Every one of these cross points is a fixed sign. I'm a Capricorn rising. Every one of mine is wow, cardinal sign. That took a while to remember. Okay. So for the full moon right now, Gemini risings will experience a full moon in their Taurus house, and it'll be opposite their Scorpio house, which is the sixth house. And we can deep dive into the specificities of that, but I'd rather kind of move on because there's a lot to talk about. And I'll show you the chart. There's a lot at play right now. Um, and I'll kind of show you how to see like what is moving and shaping. So again, like if you're Virgo rising, your cross points are all those mutable signs. For Virgo rising, the Taurus full moon will be in your ninth house. Leo rising, your cross points are all fixed signs. For you, Taurus will be in the 10th house, which is sometimes the top of your chart. The MC, which I don't see, oh, right here. The MC is technically the top of the chart, and it's not always in the 10th house, though the 10th house is really connected to the MC because that is considered the most visible part of your life. But technically, the MC, the midheaven, is the actual point of highest visibility. Just tiny little tidbit because I'm excited and researching it a lot right now. What the nearest planet to your MC is oftentimes your most visible part of yourself to other people. So if you have your Venus right on your midheaven and there's nothing else nearer than that, then people may see you more artistically or stable or appreciative or full of pleasure, like Venus significations. That's something I want to do a video on eventually. Anyway, where was I going with that? Moving on. Okay, so how are we going to apply this to the next lunation? So let's look at my chart after we look at the Taurus full moon chart. Make this smaller. Okay, so this is the chart for the full moon. This doesn't have anyone's birth information at all on it. This is just where the planets are in the sky and how they're talking to each other. These aspect lines are like the conversations that are being had between planets. There's a lot happening right now. It's not often that our sky looks like almost everything is talking to each other. Okay. The most important thing when you're looking at this kind of chart, a full moon chart, is you look at the moon and you see who the moon is talking to. For a full moon, the moon will always be exactly opposite the sun. So we're always thinking about the opposition of right now it's the Taurus and Scorpio axis. So wherever Taurus and Scorpio are in your chart, so for a Taurus rising, the moon would be in your first house and then the sun would be in your seventh house. That to me looks like first house is self in the simplest way. Seventh house is other or partner. It looks like this full moon will be very important for conversations between you and another. Or there may be a conflict, or there may be something that needs to be figured out between the two of you. Okay, that's the most important thing. Like figuring out what this axis kind of conversation is, specifically for full moons. New moons are when the sun and the moon are together. So there isn't necessarily that opposition or like teeter-totter kind of information. Okay, for this moon, it will be 1 degree away from Uranus in Taurus. And Uranus is a complex planet. All planets are complex, but Uranus is about like aha moments, insight. It could be disruption, like disturbing news, but we don't give a negative or a positive like qualifier to Uranus. Uranus just shakes things up. Like this is kind of the earthquake or the thunderbolt kind of energy. And however that plays out in your life is your choice. That's one of the important parts of astrology is like things move and shift and change. And it's how we react and integrate the information is like what qualifies something as good or bad. It's our choice. So the moon on Uranus to me says there is something, especially with the opposition to Scorpio, there is something coming to light or changing or shifting. It does in some way. And then there are two technically positive conversations or conversations being had with the moon and Uranus. There is a sextile, which is a positive aspect with Neptune in Pisces. So there's this kind of like maybe a melodious or poetic or deceptive quality. Neptune is like glamour in deceptive or thrilling ways, or like highly compassionate energy. And then there's this trine with Pluto, which has like that kind of like excavation energy, like deeply psychic, emotional, karmic kind of energy. So it's a pretty intense is not a great word to use. It's an overused word in astrology. It's a pretty lively full moon. Um, and then the last thing I want to talk about is you look at the sign of where the moon is in Taurus. Taurus is ruled by Venus, so we look at Venus just to see what's happening with her. She's not making any conversation with anyone, which is really interesting to me. I think she's the only planet. Yeah, she's the only planet who's not talking with someone when the full moon is exact, which is really interesting. The ruler of this planet is kind of chilling, watching, maybe observing, and she's in Capricorn, which is harmoniously connected to Taurus because they're both earth signs. So I wonder if she has this kind of stabilizing force where like we're gonna get this like pretty disruptive aha, but she's like overseeing the situation and letting us know that we have a friend who's not abandoning us, but she's not talking to anyone right now. So that's like that really stood out to me. Usually, I mean, in the past couple years, I've been really closely tracking full moon and new moons. Usually, the ruler of that full moon sign is doing something connected to the moon or connected to something that's talking to the moon. So that seemed interesting. Okay. All right. Am I missing something? Did we want to look at my chart?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a
We
lot of
just go
information.
back. Sorry, am I
Yeah.
allowed to talk during this?
Yeah, please, please, please.
Can we go back? So would it also be, is that, isn't that one planet not talking either? Sorry, I'm so analytical.
You know, please. Which one?
Uh, is that Virgo? Is that
Um,
right there where your cursor's on?
this is Virgo, yes.
So is it having a conversation with anyone?
Oh, okay. So there's no planets in Virgo right now.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, it's the planets that light up and talk to each other.
Got it.
But
Got
they're
it.
like
Okay.
kind of in these like lands of the zodiac signs. Like they're living on top of the land or the experience of the signs.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
No, that makes perfect sense. Okay.
Yeah. And I
Just
like
want
to connect the planets to the people. Like we have the mythic Jupiter is Zeus. You can do that. Or it's
Oh,
just like treat them like people because they are people and they're walking around and moving and talking to each other. And like that's what happens in our regular lives when we are walking around talking to each other, things change just by
right.
the nature of like sharing information or responding and that kind of stuff. So that's what the planets are doing.
Gotcha.
Yeah. That's a really good question because I don't see there's nothing in Cancer, Virgo, or Aquarius right now.
Gotcha. No, that
These,
makes a lot more
yeah,
sense.
these houses in your chart, the Cancer, Virgo, and Aquarius houses, would be a little quieter right now,
Mm.
which is funny because my house of income is Aquarius. And it's a little quiet right now. I'm fine with that, but that's interesting for me to think about. Okay, so just like quick example, I'm very comfortable with my chart. Obviously, I've spent a lot of time with it. When the sun is in my 11th house, I tend to be more social. This is the house of community, friendship, like-minded individuals. So I have been hanging out with people more this season in a couple of weeks or a week. Um, I get into my quiet zone, which is the 12th house. And that's not necessarily true for everyone, but it definitely feels true for me. Or at least I just get like I like get cozier and there's lots of reasons for that. Okay, so I'm looking at this 11th house, fifth house kind of axis, and I'm wondering if my aha, my shift, my change with this moon basically on top of Uranus will have something to do with something I'm working on creatively or working on myself. Like the fifth house can also be like self-actualization, like treating your life as an exploration or playful place for growing and changing and becoming oneself. So that's what I'm anticipating being the shift for me. I kind of want to go back to this again. See, there was the Neptune. Yeah, Neptune and okay. So then the with Pluto in my first house, there also is probably something to do with like how I see myself or how I act, how like how I want to express my existence, which makes sense because I'm working on a book. And then Pisces, if there's a connection to Neptune and Pisces in my house of writing, I'm working on a book. So I feel like I feel very confident how this full moon's going to play out in my life, and I want it to feel productive. So I don't just look at these charts where like how things are lining up in my chart in order like with just curiosity. It's definitely curiosity, but I want to focus my energy because my energy can go all around. And I think most humans are like that too, is like if they don't know what their intention is, their energy is spread across um many decisions, and maybe there's fatigue in that. So I feel like I'm just tomorrow I'm gonna really hunker down and work on my creative work and see what happens. And hopefully there is an aha there, which I have been waiting for. Um, yeah, so that's my example in my chart. Do we want to go over any of your charts? Would you feel comfortable with that?
I have
Yeah.
to jump off because I have a client right
Oh,
now.
yeah,
But you should do Ashley's and then I'll watch it later.
yeah. Okay, sounds good.
Hi, Chels.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, so then we change this chart to your data, which is the seventh, right?
Yes, correct.
Same year.
Yep.
I can cut this out too if you don't want it in.
I don't care. 7:38.
7:30 a.m.
7:38
Okay.
a.m. Yeah.
And what city?
Worcester, Ohio.
Okay. And you are in Los Angeles right now.
Mhm.
Okay, checking whole sign. It is there. Okay. All right. Is this the right time? Yes. Okay. Um, the first thing I'm looking at is your moon, and it looks activated right now by Mars, which is not what we're talking about, but that is interesting to have your own moon um, in conversation with the transiting Mars in Leo. So your Sagittarius moon is in a harmonious kind of conversation with
Hmm.
Mars. And Mars is action. Mars is many things. Mars is passion. The moon is body, sense, memory, movement. So it looks to me that like really moving your body in a way that feels good to you is important right now. So that was just kind of a ADHD moment, but could be related. Okay, so we see the moon and Uranus in your ninth house, and ninth house is like the house of questing, questions, foreign affairs, or thinking outside of your own paradigms. Could be religion if it's like expansive religion, not necessarily like structured religion, higher learning, travel, that kind of thing. Um, does that feel like it's connected to something happening right now?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in the sense of trying to find the location to be, right? Like I've
Yeah.
been in transit moving around and we don't really have a place yet. So,
Yeah. What's interesting to me is that your natal moon in Sagittarius has a
Mm-hmm.
very similar feeling to a transiting moon in your ninth. Because a natal moon in a Sagittarius is like pretty comfortable, maybe not from seeing your face, pretty comfortable moving around and like finding home in other places or finding family in other places. Um, so that has a very similar vibe to this Taurus moon in the ninth house. Taurus moon loves like getting cozy, enjoying oneself. And in the ninth house is like finding the coziness and pleasure in another place. That
Mm.
does feel like it's a major theme is like, is it actually feeling cozy to you right now? Maybe not. So then the opposition you're experiencing is with the third house, in which third house is one of the most hodgepodge houses, maybe, at least in modern life.
Mm.
It's difficult to describe in a couple words, but it's like early learning, language, community, neighborhood, weekly life. So that's kind of the opposition happening right now for you, the Scorpio stuff. So this Scorpio season's almost over. The Scorpio season has been like a lot of movement in like smaller ways. And then you
Mm.
have this moon in the opposite places, like maybe there's big movement in like different or similar ways, but it's kind of louder because of this like higher paradigm kind of sense, or like it's called the house of God, um,
Oh,
where the third house is the house of the goddess. Goddess is more about ritual, where the house of God is more about like frameworks of thought.
interesting. Huh. That's just like something interesting to reflect on because I'm not sure exactly how that's panning out for me right now.
Yeah, yeah. So then let's look at the two connectors that the moon was having a conversation with. It was okay, so the Neptune and Pisces, okay. So there's a positive conversation happening between Uranus and the moon with Neptune and Pisces in the seventh house of partner or other. Um, so this could look like there's just inextricably this conversation of movement is connected to
Huh.
partnership.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Um,
How do you know they're having a harmonious conversation? Where do you?
I had to remember the chart's not showing it. So oh here's the chart. Okay. It's flipping around, but there's the chart. Let me go back
Oh,
to your birth chart. Yeah, it's not showing it, and I thought it would. Yeah.
gotcha.
So that, and then it was the Pluto that was the other
I see.
conversation.
Huh. Well, that is
Yeah.
interesting that it's with partnership because that definitely makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, movement or like moving places, shifting around usually does have to do with the person that you live with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interestingly, the other conversation is another positive conversation with Pluto, which is kind of this like deep shift, deep change kind of planet. It's shifting and changing toward purity. And I use that word not in the sense that Christians might. Purity, truth, really getting to the core of something. It's in your house of, I talked about this earlier, like self-actualization, creation. Um,
Mm.
this is the house of joy, playfulness, children. It's a house of many things, but it's basically the house where you experience growing in a way that feels like supportive of your soul. It's usually always joyful. So you're having this like conversation with the moon and all of this, the movement and the partner, and then there's like this deep shift toward or with truth in playfulness or youthfulness or self-growth.
Wow. I mean, I love that type of conversation. I'm just interested to see how do I work with that if I'm a little confused? I wouldn't say confused, but uncertain of how they all kind of marry together.
Yeah, okay. because you called attention to the Virgo house having no planets right now and the Cancer house, and it was Aquarius as well, I would give yourself a break on these three houses because there's not necessarily energy lighting them up right now. So the
Right.
first house is like self-identity, showing up. Um, I would not give yourself any pressure there. Just like, okay, this is not what the full moon's about. It's not about me and my personality. And
Good.
then your sixth house of like service, work, labor, environment, health. I would give yourself a break on that too. Like, I'm not worrying or thinking about or trying to improve my health, my labor, my work situation, the way that I show service. I'm not worrying about that. And then Cancer is the 11th house of like groups, like-minded individuals, social media, possibly. Give yourself a break there.
Okay.
So then that gives you more focus. Like, okay, right now for this full moon, I want to like really give my intention to thinking broadly and enjoying my short-term smaller communities, making sure my partner and I are discussing this, and then
Mm,
also giving myself that like really good juice and time to focus on like truth and purity and like change like on a really deep level when it comes to like being my full self and growing as my full self. Well,
mm,
that's what everything's in conversation. And that becoming, like the word is becoming, maybe allowing
hmm
yourself to become in this question, this opposition of where are my places
mm.
and how do they affect my self-actualization? I think that is how you could work with this moon. And the moon can be mostly reflective, or you could take action as well because it's a full moon
Where are my places? Like what, like places in the chart, you mean?
in your life. Like
Mm.
where do you want to go? Or how do you want your
Oh,
life to
oh.
look? Your weekly life, but also just like in the grand scheme, where are the places you want to be in order to grow? You also don't have to do much work because we have Uranus here, and Uranus is going to like lightning bolt and give you that. I don't know what it could look like. It could look like he like offers you an insight in you come across someone on the street, they say something like it, you can't predict it. That's like the Uranus energy. But allow yourself to notice, though Uranus usually doesn't go unnoticed, but allow yourself to like accept something that does change.
Okay.
And this is also like, this is just the full moon chart. There is a lot happening. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot
Mm.
happening in the sky.
It also just feels like for me in that sense of a moon that I don't have to work really hard at, maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Just kind of enjoy, like you said, kind of think about the bigger picture. Just kind of fun to do without having to get into all the
Yeah.
tiny details.
The last thing I kind of want to point out is because you're Virgo rising,
Mm.
your chart ruler is Mercury. So wherever Mercury is in the sky at any point is like an extra special message for you. Um, there are many ways to think about this. Like whenever Mercury changes signs, I believe they create a new season in your life. And Mercury changes signs like about at the rate the sun does, kind of,
Oh,
depending on if it's retrograde or not. So like every month-ish, you start a new season, like a new focus. So right now, Mercury's in Sagittarius, and we know from your chart that Sagittarius is your fourth house. So in this season right now, and Mercury's been there for a bit, is like to focus your energy on like inside. This is the house of foundational life. It's not always visible to other people. It's mostly private. And it's often where we experience like sorting our emotions or feeling our emotions or understanding that our emotions shift and change and they are messengers. But when Mercury moves into the fifth house soon,
Mm.
then your season will be about self-actualization, creation, exploring your like gifts and talents, what you enjoy doing. Right now,
Mm.
it's kind of a quieter time.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
That's fine.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, was there anything else I wanted to talk about? This is like such an awkward YouTube video, but I'm gonna put it up and you're gonna watch it. If you want to watch it, if you're still watching, you're still watching. Okay, the last thing. Oh, I just wanted to say, like, when you go to your transit chart, it doesn't have to be for a full moon or a new moon. You can track where so I'm gonna just move 2 days ahead because the moon changes signs every 2.5-ish days.
Um,
So on Saturday, the moon is in your 10th house. And like you
oh,
can track the moon and like if you want a reason to organize your week in a specific way. Like I love using the planets as energy like indicators. Um, like I said earlier, when the sun is in the 12th house, I tend not to meet up with friends. I like just kind of meditate, do yoga, sleep a lot, because I know that that house for all people and for me specifically is like when I dream the most, when I get the most like intuitive messages and I want to be in a space to receive them. Or if I fill them up with like social engagements, I get overwhelmed and I don't want to do that to myself. So when the
mm,
moon is there, I try not to plan anything that like is going to make me feel overwhelmed because I want to be receptive. But when the moon's
interesting.
in the 10th house, that is your most visible house because MC is there. That might be like starting Saturday. That might be a really good time to be around people and show up.
Mm,
That's the last thing I wanted to share is like tracking the moon can be for some helpful for deciding how you want to spend your week or your day.
I
Um
like
yeah,
energy indicators.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
And like when not many of us can control when our energy dips or peaks, and that can help you. Um, Also, tracking the moon is really, really helpful, I believe, for Cancer risings or people who have like significant Cancer placements. And I have a Cancer moon, so I think that's why it's more helpful for me. Where if you don't have any Cancer placements, it might not be that supportive.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, this is extremely helpful, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to end this video.
Yeah.
So 1 second. Hi everyone, thank you for watching. You're perfect, and I already like you probably. You can prove me wrong. Okay, this is how I'm gonna sign off on a YouTube video. If you should look in the description for the link to the Notion page if you want to use that. Okay, bye. I'm going to stop share and then I'm going to